Attack on Titan is one of the best anime ever made. Maybe not even anime, maybe one of the best stories ever told. And there's a lot that I have to say about Attack on Titan. But I think the most salient point about Attack on Titan is that it was written by a Japanese person. What do I mean by that? So, we're going to do a brief history lesson here. After the end of World War II, Japan became a vassal of the United States. And what happened before that is that Japan was a global empire, or at least they were a regional empire that controlled a large portion of Asia. And they did this all in the span of about 60 years. They went from being a feudal society that still used muskets and swords to becoming a global empire. And you really have to hesitate away from saying the word superior or anything like that, but it has to be said that there's something unique about Japan. Because a normal nation of normal group of people is not really able to go from feudal medieval society to global empire in the span of like 1 or 2 generations. Normal people don't really do that. So, after World War II, Japan is humiliated on the world stage. They no longer have territories. They don't have any land that they control outside of the home islands. And there's even a few of the home islands that they no longer control, that they had to cede to Russia at the end of the war. And they've been an American vassal state ever since. They can't really control their own foreign policy. They have to do everything America says, and they have no power and they have nothing. And it's from that context that I think it's important to realize that that is the situation that the author of Attack on Titan grew up in. That is the global situation that he found himself in. Now, when we watch Attack on Titan, maybe the first thing you'll notice is that everyone in the show has European characteristics and they have European names. For example, Erwin is obviously named after Erwin Rommel, the famous World War II tank commander on the German side. And everyone in the show has things like pronounced noses, they have brown and yellow hair, they have colored eyes. So it's pretty obvious that the people in the manga are supposed to be white people. Or, I guess more generally, you can say they're supposed to be European people, or descended from Europeans. Now, why did I bring up the situation of Japan in reference to Attack on Titan? I brought it up because something similar happened to Europe. Europe had all of its colonial territories stripped away from it after the end of World War II. And you can say, well, what about the French control over Africa? Or, what about the territories that Russia holds in Africa? They pale in comparison to what the European empires used to be, which were globe-spanning, resource extraction operations that also built things like railroads, brought modern medicine to the third world, things like that. But essentially, Europe after World War II ceased to be an empire. Europe today is kind of just a joke. They have no control over anything. And they're essentially very similar to Japan in that every European country is just a vassal of the United States, obviously excluding Russia. And it's in that context that, like me, it's in that context that I have grown up in. Of course, I'm an American. But people of European ancestry, of course, grow up in schools that teach them all about that. Teach them all about their evil history, about how we enslaved the world and basically white people are the root of all evil, and that our ancestors were evil, and that everything we've ever done has been bad for the world. In school, we learn about, at least in America, in school we learn about slavery. We extensively learn about it and how awful it was and how brutal. We skip right into that, where you go right into colonialism. We start talking about the evils that Europeans were performing on the world. And of course, we talk about the American colonization efforts in Latin America. And then we skip right into the Holocaust, and we start learning about the evil Germans who killed 18 million Jews. Or I think it's 18 million. I've heard that they've revised the figure upwards maybe to be 20 million Jews recently. But it's a lot of Jewish people that died in the Holocaust at the hands of the evil white people, like I was just talking about. And then, of course, we get into the civil rights movement, where we talk about how the evil white people were defeated by the MLK and the Civil Rights Coalition. So it's in the context of all of that that me and my generation grew up in. And the author of Attack on Titan is not an idiot. He's a very smart man. And obviously, when he was writing Attack on Titan, and he's writing about these fictional peoples, the Eldians and the Marleyans, they're supposed to represent Europeans. And specifically, there is this narrative of guilt that some of the Eldian characters have. Talking about Reinhold, or talking about Berthold, Reinhard, talking about Annie, talking about Gabby. They were essentially, they're like us. They were brought up to believe that their ancestors were evil, that the Eldians were evil, and that they controlled the Marleyans and they controlled the whole world. And for that reason, the Eldians have to be oppressed and they have to be put in this concentration camp in Madagascar. I think the island is called Eldia, or, Paradis. Either interchangeable, really. But the Eldians are, to the extent that they are aware of their situation, the ones that are aware hate their own race. And they hate their own people because they were taught that their ancestors were evil. And it's for that reason that they have the Titans set on them. The Titans, of course, being these monsters that kill and eat Eldians, specifically because they are Eldian. And the fanaticism with which people like Gabby will go to work to destroy their own race, to kill their own people, it's like they truly love doing it and they truly enjoy it. And the reason for that is because they really believe it. They really believe that Eldians deserve it, that Eldians are the dirt on the shoe of the world, that they deserve to die. And if you're watching this video right now and you're, of European descent, you know somebody like Gabby in your life. Someone who hates themselves, hates their ancestors, and would do anything to denigrate the position of white people in society, basically. If you're honest with yourself, you know someone like that in your life. And so that's why it's so surprising to me that characters like Flock, for example, are treated like the bad guy. Or characters like Eren Yeager, when he goes through the rumbling and he attempts to kill, everyone who's not Eldian on the planet. They're treated like villains. And you have to ask yourself if the people who call them villains even watched the show. So the entire context of the show is that the Eldians are basically in a concentration camp, and they have been getting ruthlessly killed. Their families have been getting eaten by Titans for 100 years for crimes that happened before anybody was born in the entire universe. And then you watch them have a real chance at freeing themselves, a real chance at fighting back against the people who did this to them. And their immediate gut reaction is, that's evil. Defending yourself and your people is evil. And it's those people that I think are basically people who would be Gabby in real life. They would be the one that's firing the anti-tank gun. They would be the one that's going on a mission to kill every Eldian or make them all sterile. They would be the person who would be a Gabby. Someone who just hates even the idea that their ancestors existed. And I guess my point with all of this, and how I'm going to tie this all up, is that it all really comes back to Erwin's speech before he charges at the Beast Titan. You know, the speech that became like a huge meme, where he says, you know, their lives have meaning because we refuse to forget them. And I guess the point of that speech, and it's more clear in the manga because Erwin is standing on the corpses of everyone that he ordered to die. The point of that speech is, are we going to let our ancestors' deaths be meaningless or not? And I want you to think about that question as it relates to you, yourself as well. Your ancestors who maybe died in World War II, died in World War I for nebulous reasons, died in the American Civil War maybe, or died in any of the European wars. Did they die for nothing? And I want you to really think about that. Did they die for nothing? And I think that if you continue to allow Europe to become less European, if you are a Gabby, if you're a Gabby person, and you fight for the erasure of your own people, then the answer to that question is yes. Your ancestors specifically died for nothing. But it doesn't have to be like that. Your ancestors were just as human as you were. They were, you know, farmers. They were soldiers. They were doctors, lawyers, kings. Our ancestors were people, and they deserve to be respected. They are just as much family to you as your father, your mother, your grandparents. They're just older. And they fought and they died so that you could have a good life. So that our countries, our European countries, would be prosperous. And I think it's not evil to accept that. It's not evil to remember them fondly. And that's the point of Attack on Titan. That's the point of Erwin. Is that we refuse to forget our ancestors. And we refuse to condemn them. Because to condemn them is to condemn ourselves. And we refuse to do that. Thank you for watching. Happy New Year's.